Welcome back to Liberty Hour. I'm your host, Alex Newman, here on American Media Periscope. Thank you so much for tuning in. Our guest for the second segment here is Colonel Chris Wyatt. He is retired, but now he's the principal and CEO of the Indaba Africa Group in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. His biography, it would take us the rest of the show to go through it. I'll give you just some of the highlights. He's a retired U.S. Army military intelligence officer, foreign area officer for sub-Saharan Africa. He's the past director of African studies at the U.S. Army War College in Pennsylvania. He was previously senior military advisor to the U.S. mission to the African Union. He's got extensive experience all across Europe with tours in Germany, Italy, the Balkans, the Levant, Southwest Asia. Also, he's done a lot of work in Africa. He's been assigned in Tunisia, Liberia, Botswana, Niger, Mauritania, Uganda, Ethiopia. I mean, it goes on and on. He has served as senior defense representative, security assistance officer, and attaché in various different African countries. He's a published author. He's got a lot of experience in defense and security, strategic, tactical, operational intelligence, signals, and counterintelligence. I could go on. It's just incredible how much this man has done. And I first started following him. I used to live in South Africa. I'm fascinated by South Africa. I love that place and I love the people there. And Colonel Wyatt really understood it better than just about anybody that I came across. Colonel, welcome to the program. It's great to have you here. Before we get into Africa and international affairs, I want to talk about Joe Biden and these classified documents that are popping up in his garage. We didn't talk before the show, but I see now the fake media is really on this story. I'm like, what is going on here? The fake media didn't suddenly grow a conscience and start caring about things. So my hypothesis is that something fishy is going on here. But Chris, give us your take.
Well, Alex, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to be back on the program. And since my last visit on the program, you may notice that my beard, which was down to my navel as a lockdown response, has been trimmed. It's because, like America, my beard is in recession. I thought I'd share that with you very quickly.
I love it.
So I just say one more point before we get into the documents, and that's Representative Scott. It is that bad, and it's worse. While I spent 36 years in the Army, 23 of those overseas, people back here planned and worked to obliterate our basic rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution, the entire Constitution. It is that bad. All right, so the documents. First off, there is something very suspicious here. It's got to be the greatest cover-up in this millennium thus far. It's unbelievable what's happening here. And, of course, the apologists for the Democratic Party, the leftists, go on their little apology tour over the weekend. Stabenow from Michigan and Jamie Raskin from Maryland go out on the weekend shows, meet the press and all these others, and try to make excuses for Joe Biden. Joe Biden and Donald Trump classified document issue are completely separate, and one is not germane to the other. There may, in fact, be violations on the part of Trump, but we've yet to know that because the information isn't known. But the situation is entirely different. Joe Biden had documents that were 6 or 7 years old, including top secret, sensitive compartment information, which must be stored in a facility under lock and key, electronic surveillance, multiple barriers, armed guards, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it was sitting in an office building in D.C., exposed to whoever came and signed in with the secretary. Plus, now we find the Corvette papers, Joe Biden's Corvette papers. Remember the Pentagon papers? Well, these are the Corvette papers. He left papers in his garage, secured in a box in Wilmington. And then we find more in his personal library. Now, in the end of this, it may just be Joe Biden's arrogance that explains why he has these documents, or his ignorance and his aloofness. That may be what it is. But at this point, the only conclusion one can reach is he stole these documents. I can't imagine he got someone who had a clearance, acquire these things, and stick them in places for him. But Joe Biden habitually, when he was vice president, would ride on the Acela train from D.C. up to Wilmington, carrying classified documents with his military and civilian personnel that were present with him, and would open up top secret documents and read them in the open on the train. When the military would tell him and the civilians say, "So you can't do that. You can't do that. This isn't a secure environment. You can't even be carrying that. You don't have the proper, we can put it in our case and lock for you." "Oh, it's okay. These are my people." The man who says everyone knows he takes national security and classified information seriously is a joke. And there's much more to unpack here, but let me just put a couple more points before I take a breath there, Alex. And that is, number one, that you can be prosecuted under the Espionage Act, and I was a counterintelligence agent who investigated these crimes and pursued these things. You can be investigated for possessing classified information, even if it's not marked properly. So if somehow you wind up with a top secret document or a secret document that wasn't marked properly, you don't even have to have the intent. That's gross negligence. You can go to jail, federal felony for that. And there's no doubt that Joe Biden has violated the Espionage Act. He had no authority to do this. And I don't know how he gets out from under this one. The press is trying to carry the water for him, but even the press is turning on Joe Biden now. So we'll see what happens here. I wonder if the left is finally tired of Joe, and it's time for the Manchurian cadaver to fold up his tent and move on so Kamala can take over.
Yeah, I've been wondering the same thing, Chris. I wonder if Barack Obama, sitting in his, second White House there in Washington D.C., said, "You know what, Joe's just embarrassing us all. It's time to move him off the stage, and we'll come up with somebody else." But there's some really interesting stuff about these classified documents. So one of the things that I find so interesting, we know that Hunter Biden has had all these super suspicious relationships with foreign powers. From his laptop, we've got the audio where he's bragging about being a business partner of the blankety blank blank spy chief of China. We know the big guy, Joe Biden, was getting 10%. And we know that Hunter Biden was paying his dad about $50,000 a month in rent to live at his house, where all these papers were just conveniently hanging out next to the Corvette. I don't know exactly what's going on here, but it really, really looks bad. I mean, it looks really, really bad, especially when they want to try to use that to persecute Donald Trump. What should be done here, Chris? I mean, is this something that we need a special counsel and prosecutions? I mean, how does this end?
Well, we do have a special counsel now into the Biden situation, and it was actually, mildly entertaining to watch Attorney General Meritless Garland actually come out and look like he was suffering from gastrointestinal problems and a bowel movement issue as he stood there and tried to we're appointing a special counsel. He really did that against his will. I mean, you could see the pain in this. This guy was appointed by Biden. This guy is only there after he was blown off and didn't make it in the Supreme Court. There is a special counsel, but here's the thing: it's a cover-up. There's no two ways about this. First off, the documents were discovered by his attorneys. Do they even have clearance? And what are they doing looking for documents on the 3rd of November, days before the midterm elections? Did somebody say, I think Joe's got some documents. You better go look for those. And then they take the hands-off approach. We allow their attorneys to turn it in. Really? What, did they carry it in their car? Another security violation, another federal violation of the Espionage Act. Did they deliver it to someone? This is ridiculous. And then they covered it up until after the midterm elections because they knew it would be damaging. Whereas, now I don't like to compare the Trump case, but there is a very direct parallel here. Trump, he had these documents stored in a place where Secret Service are 24 hours a day in his primary residence. That doesn't mean they were stored appropriately or legally, but the degree of protection potentially around these documents far exceeds Joe Biden leaving it in an office or in his garage in a Corvette. So Donald Trump, 91 days before the elections, because the Justice Department, or as I prefer to call it these days, the Injustice Department under Meritless Garland, what they do is they have an internal rule that they will not intrude in any high-level political races with any grand jury announcements or any investigations or any arrest within 90 days of an election. And that's a reasonable rule because it could affect an election for an innocent person. But 91 days before the election, there they are in the dark of hour, pre-dawn, with FBI, 36 agents, body armor, automatic weapons, to go into a place where there's armed federal agents. Now, the president wasn't there, but protecting his residence. And then tipping off the press. Compare that to Joe Biden cover-up of the documents being found on the 3rd of November, turned in to the Attorney General on the 9th, after the election. And then on the 14th, just 5 days later, he appoints a special counsel in the Trump case and then lets this run for 9 weeks. And the only reason that Merrick Garland did this is he had no choice. And I'll tell you why he had no choice. November 3rd, documents found in D.C. at the Biden think tank. Now, there's an oxymoron for you right there. It's just oxymoron, isn't it? I just can't come to grips with that one. They find documents on November 3rd. Then, instead of sending FBI agents out, his lawyers find more documents in the garage next to the Corvette on December 20th. And then on January 12th, the day that the special counsel appointed, and you know that Merrick Garland didn't want to do this, they found more documents in his library. Where are the rest of them? Are they sitting in the crevice between seats on the Acela train in Wilmington? Are they in a 7-Eleven? Because you have to be an Indian accent in order to have a 7-Eleven in Delaware. Just saying. This is horrific. And where does it go? The special counsel, unfortunately, is a bought and paid for pro-leftist member of the legal community. Her, and so I don't think anything will come of this. But the bottom line is this: they thought they had Trump again. We got Trump, even though they cooked up the story and got it all wrong. Now they don't have Trump. There's no way that they can indict or prosecute for this Trump when Biden's actions are far more egregious and potentially more damaging. because they may have been exposed to Lord knows who had access to those documents. Bottom line, both of these things go away. Both sides probably obviously broke administrative rules for the executive branch. Biden violated the Espionage Act. Whether Trump did or not, we have to find out, because he does have declassification authority. That doesn't mean he classified it. But a lot of people think it's, it's complicated. He's got to sign a document. Nope. President of the United States, all he has to do is open his mouth and say, this is declassified. Anything in the federal government or executive branch, he can do that too. But the problem is that they were still marked classified. So somebody didn't go behind Trump who was authorized and declassify them. And that's why Trump has an at least administrative problem. But Joe Biden is clearly violated the espionage rule, and there's no question about it. And there should be, if things were done right, now they won't prosecute him as president, but when he's done his time as president, if he's still breathing, he's got a pulse, he should be facing federal espionage charges.
It'll be fascinating to see how this turns out. Chris, we're down to about 60 seconds. I wanted to ask you about South Africa. A mutual friend just today sent me an article about the South African Navy is now going to be participating in joint naval operations and exercises with the Chi-Coms and the Russians. And, the opposition parties are like, what are you doing, man? What about our Western trading partners? Of course, they still want to steal everybody's land without compensation. I've often said that South Africa is kind of the model of what they want for the United States. Give us your 60-second take on what's going on in South Africa.
The ruling African National Congress has a great affinity for communism and socialism, having gotten succor and refuge in the Soviet Union, the former German Democratic Republic, Cuba, Communist China. And they kowtow to those people. They are fellow travelers. They're happy to spew their nonsense. That's why South Africa didn't condemn the Ukraine invasion. And what we have happening here is this is an exercise that happened in the past in 2019. They love to chummy up to the Russians and the Chinese communists, while all the money they get in trade is with the West. And they'll take our money to fight HIV through PEPFAR. They'll take our money for the just energy transition. They'll take our loans from World Bank, the IMF, and everyone else, but they will do the bidding of the commies. It's really sick and twisted. They're playing both sides, but in the end, they're not our friends, and they're really dangerous. That country is on the verge of total collapse. The electrical grid will collapse very soon in South Africa, and it will be a disaster.
Yep, and I think the commies will be laughing all the way to the bank.